Tyre was a major port. If you remember from your world history classes in high school or something, that the boat builders in the ancient world were the Phoenicians. And in Phoenicia, the major cities were Sidon and Tyre. Tyre here now is a major port in the first century with Paul. And so this is why they're going to go there first. Then they'll skip down the coast till they get to Caesarea. And if you remember our class several years ago on Herod and the things that he built, one of his great accomplishments was that he built the city of Caesarea. And he built that magnificent harbor. The remains are still there. And it was one of the ancient wonders of the world. And they will go there, and it will be Caesarea that Paul will finally get to. And it's from Caesarea that he will turn around and make his final voyage back to Rome. But they're skipping down the coast here so that they can make their way. He's wanting to get to Jerusalem. But he'll meet some people along the way that we're going to read here in just a minute. Ed?
Very quickly, he doesn't go back to Antioch. This is unique. He had always come back to Antioch.
That's right.
So now he doesn't. And one of the interesting questions I have always had that's not answered to my knowledge is, did he ever get back to Antioch again?
Yeah.
After he's released from prison, we have no record of it. It's very interesting because he was really tight with us.
It says he didn't get to Antioch. We're going to answer that when we get to verse 17. Okay, but we're in verse 3 right now. But we're heading that direction here. Okay, so when they had come in sight of Cyprus, verse 3, and landed at Tyre, we probably sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, for that's where the ship was going to unload its cargo. And having sought out the disciples, we stayed there for 7 days. Why do you suppose they stayed 7 days in Tyre? Could it be the same reason? Yes, Roy? Exactly. Exactly. They stayed in Troas for 7 days, waiting for the Lord's day so that they could worship together. What they did in Troas is exactly what they're doing here in Tyre. Because notice they sought out the disciples. Stop here for a 15-second sermon. Especially in today's world, the last 2 years where everybody worships on their own, they were looking for disciples to worship with. That's a good lesson. When we come to an area looking out for disciples to worship with, it helps them and it helps you. Okay, that's a whole sermon. We'll pass on that. Okay, you got the idea. They sought him out, stayed there 7 days, and through the Spirit, they were telling Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. Now, this is an interesting statement. The way it's phrased, some might think here that the Holy Spirit was forbidding Paul to go to Jerusalem. That's not what's happening here. Somehow, some way, these disciples, through the Spirit, how, I don't know, but they understood that Paul was about to embark on a very dangerous mission. And they're telling him, don't go there. Don't go there. Now, this is just an observation. Take it or leave it, however it goes. Not to criticize or diminish anyone's faith in the Lord. But the disciples at Tyre, we don't know who all they were. But they were believing Christians, no doubt. They were believing Christians and were rejoicing in their faith in the Lord. But they're not the Apostle Paul. What has their experience been? It's been very minimal. Paul has been all over the place, imprisoned, beaten, run out of town, left for dead, etc. And they say, you better not go to Jerusalem. And Paul is thinking, oh, it's okay. So I can handle this. Oh, and I can just see the sisters in Tyre. Paul, please don't. No. Maybe the brother did. No, please. Yeah, it's okay. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how that strikes me. Bless their sweethearts. They're wanting to protect their brother Paul. And Paul says, no, I've got to go here. He long before he ever met them, it was in his mind. He's going to Jerusalem, and he's going to make it there. And so verse 5, when our days there were ended, that's these 7 days, and we departed and went on our journey, they all, with wives and children, accompanied us until we were outside the cities, and kneeling down on the beach, we prayed. What a beautiful picture that is. These people that have come to love Paul just within a week. He's been there 7 days. No doubt they have heard of Paul. Possibly some of them had met Paul earlier in his life and in the world. But here now when it's time to leave, all of them, with the wives and the children, they come out to the beach. And I'll tell you, the beach along that stretch through there is second to none. It is a gorgeous beach. And I can just see these people out there in this wonderful weather and this beautiful water and this unique sand. They have a sand like I've never seen before. Looks like jigsaw puzzles. It's just pieces, little rocks with holes in it. And you could pick up a bunch of them. They look like puzzles. No two are alike. It's like, granite snowflakes. It's just a kind of a strange world. I started to take some home, and I was told it's against the law. I couldn't. Man, I'd love to get some of those and put them in a baggie and take them home with me, but you weren't allowed to touch them. Anyway, I digress, and Brent's going to digress. Yes, Brent? I'm going to digress. Okay. I think you're exactly right. Brent is making the point that we don't know all the people that Paul laid his hands on, and it could have been some of these people that had made their way to Tyre or other places, and the Holy Spirit was still in contact with these people in some way, as this previous verse just showed, and that we don't know what all that they had learned and known about that. And I think that's exactly right. And that's why they were so worried about Paul's future. But I think that's what's happened there. So within that first century box, before the completed written revelation that we have with us today, while they were still wondering and passing letters back and forth, the Holy Spirit, I believe you're right, Brent, was very active. How and to what extent, we don't know. It's anyone's guess. But as they were doing this, Paul is making his way through learning, meeting these people, making wonderful friends and with these brethren, and now he's pushing on. They say goodbye at the beach, and when they said farewell to one another in verse 6, they went on board the ship. They returned home. When we had finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at Ptolemais. We greeted the brothers and stayed with them for 1 day, and the next day we departed and came to Caesarea. They skip down and they finally get to the big port, to Caesarea. And Caesarea, you remember, is the city. The first convert, at least as recorded in the New Testament from Caesarea, was Cornelius. Cornelius was a Roman soldier stationed at Caesarea. Now, whether if he's still there or not, we don't know. But there are Christians there. There are brethren there. And one of them is Philip. Now, we know who Philip is. And it said, we entered the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the 7 mentioned earlier that were chosen, to wait on the tables for the widows in Acts 6. And we stayed with him. He had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. Now, he's the Philip of Acts 8 who got in the chariot with the Ethiopian eunuch and taught him the gospel. And the Ethiopian treasurer went down to Ethiopia and established the church that his legacy is still there today. And that's just an amazing thought, but for another time. And verse 10, while we were staying for many days, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. We've heard of this fellow before. Agabus was the prophet that came to Antioch in Acts 11 that had told them a great famine is coming. And it'll be all over the world. And that's when you remember the brethren in Antioch had decided to gather some funds to send to the brethren in Jerusalem. This is the same fella. And he comes now, but it's a little more dire. But we'll have to talk about his prophecy Wednesday night because we're out of time. Wow. Okay. All right. We'll pick up there, Lord willing, Wednesday night in verse 10. And Agabus comes from Judea. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me get this.
I really love the next class.
Thank you very much.
I really do.
Appreciate it. Appreciate
One of
it.
the funny things about it, it's not something I would be contentious about, but it's fascinating because he has 4 virtual daughters that prophesy, and they don't do the